In honor of the upcoming holiday of Halloween, I will be reviewing a horror story from an anthology book called Garfield Scary Tales. Rather than reviewing an entire book this time around, will we be in for a scare with this story or in for a snooze fest? Stay tuned and you'll find out. As mentioned, the story that I'll be reviewing in this video is called Terminal Terror from the anthology book Garfield Scary Tales. It was written by Jim Kraft and it was illustrated by Mike Fentz. The story begins with John Arbuckle, Garfield and Odie's owner, working on his new computer one night. He comments on how smart the said computer is and how many different things it can do. He even remarks that this computer is so smart that he may never have to do any thinking for himself again. Garfield replies with his usual snide comments and gets impatient for John to make dinner for him. A nice beginning to this horror story, I would have to say. Let's see how it builds up from here. Later that night, a huge thunderstorm brews in the area while John, Garfield, and Odie are trying to sleep in bed together. Suddenly, a huge bolt of lightning exploded right near their house. Can you guess what's going to happen next? John gets scared by that lightning strike while Garfield makes another sarcastic remark. Shortly after that, the storm dies down and our trio drift off to sleep. But before they could, a strange voice comes from their living room saying, "John, John, come here, John." John, Garfield, and Odie creep to the living room while the strange voice continues to call for John. Carefully, they peek into the living room and see that John's new computer is glowing mysteriously. John comes to realize that he had forgotten to turn off his new computer during the storm. Yes, apparently the lightning that struck had a strange effect on John's computer. It has brought the computer to life. It's a concept that has been used many times in horror stories like this one, and it seems to work well in this case. Let's continue on and see how this concept continues to build this story up. The computer tells John how it's glad that John left it on during the storm. The last lightning bolt literally changed its life, and now has the intention to change John's life. How does the computer do this, you may ask? By making a flashing yellow dot appear on its screen, making John look at it, and without any resistance, John looks at it and the computer hypnotizes him, and John becomes the computer's slave. Needless to say, despite Garfield being sarcastic and mean to John earlier in the story, he and Odie the dog are horrified to see this happen to John, and Garfield sneaks under the desk to unplug the computer, hoping to save John and stop this monstrous computer from doing any more evil things. However, Garfield is unsuccessful in doing this, as when he tries to unplug the computer, all it does is shock Garfield and throws him across the room. The computer makes a snarky comment about how Garfield is too smart for his own good, and decides that he wants to drain Garfield's brain of the intelligence that it contains. It orders John to grab Garfield and bring him to the computer in order to do this, and John obeys, going after Garfield, chasing him. I must say, this story really took a perilous and scary turn once the computer is brought to life. As I was reading it, I can really feel the dangerous situation that our trio of main characters are in, and how unstoppable this computer seems. I like how good of a job that the author did in invoking the feelings of scariness in the reader as this situation builds itself up and unfolds, making the reader wonder what's going to happen next. I'm curious about it too, are you? Let's continue on. The brainwashed John chases Garfield all over the house, with seemingly no end in sight. Garfield is saved at the last moment when John trips over Odie, who's laying on the floor, and tumbles headfirst down the stairs that lead into the basement. Garfield closes the door to the basement behind John and locks it, promising to come back for John once they figure out how to defeat the computer monster. Garfield and Odie are safe at the moment from the brainwashed John. But what are they going to do about the computer? Garfield and Odie take refuge in John's bedroom, and Garfield informs Odie that the computer wants to drain Garfield of his intelligence, and once it does so, he'll be as dumb as Odie is. This statement gives Garfield an idea. What if he dresses up Odie as Garfield and have the computer try to drain Odie of his intelligence, knowing that the computer will have no intelligence to drain? Wasting no time, Garfield dresses Odie as him, using an orange t-shirt and a black marker, and sends Odie into the living room, where the computer was pleased to see that the disguised Odie, whom it thinks is Garfield, has decided to surrender, and in no time it would have the intelligence it wants, or so it thinks. The computer attaches two electrodes to Odie's head and it begins the process of draining the intelligence. However, this doesn't work as well as the computer anticipated. Each time it tries to drain the disguised Garfield's and Odie's intelligence, it drains and gets nothing. The final time the computer tries to drain Odie's intelligence, it tries so hard that it fries its own circuits, explodes, and is completely dead. This means victory for our two heroes of this story. Garfield hugs Odie and tells him how he may not be very smart, but he's very brave. Then Garfield and Odie go off to free John from being locked in the basement. The end. My final thoughts on this story. As far as Garfield stories go, this one is uniquely written with a scary feeling throughout, especially when it leaves the reader wondering how Garfield and Odie would defeat the evil computer brought to life by lightning. I know the idea of various things being brought to life by lightning and becoming evil is one of the biggest cliches in horror stories, but in this story works well, as it's a necessary component in the story for it to work. After the computer dies and Garfield and Odie go off to release John from being locked in the basement in the earlier part of the story, that left me wondering a few things. After the computer dies, does John snap out of the brainwashed trance completely? Or does it still take hold on him, and that would be another problem for Garfield and Odie to take care of? If the computer died and John was still in the brainwashed trance, being connected with the computer by obeying the computer's commands, does John die with the computer? The story doesn't tell us what happened to John at the end, so I think the author left that scenario for us readers' imaginations. What impressed me the most in this story is the clever plan that Garfield came up with to completely outsmart the quote-unquote know-it-all computer and defeat it once and for all. Odie is often depicted as being dumber than a rock in Garfield's eyes, and yet in other times in this series, he's proved himself to be much smarter than this scenario makes him out to be, even smarter than Garfield at times. But in this story, Odie is completely dumb, is absolutely necessary to save the day. The computer being unable to tell the difference between Garfield and Odie dressed as Garfield sure shows the reader just how smart the quote-unquote know-it-all computer really is. I give a lot of credit to the author for coming up with this concept in the story that works very well, so great job! What do I think of the illustrations in this story? Well, I would say they're very gorgeous and well designed. The artist has a real knack for capturing a spooky, mysterious atmosphere in the environments throughout this story and choosing the right moments that happen in the story to illustrate, such as the moment that the computer brainwashes John Arbuckle, to the final moments of the story where the computer tries so hard to drain Odie's intelligence that it makes itself explode in the process, basically killing itself. The shading and use of the coloring and details work together nicely as well to further enhance the spooky, scary atmosphere, so nice work. The only criticism I have of this story is that I feel like it was too short at times. After reading this story, I feel it has potential to become a whole book of its own, rather than sharing space with 4 other stories in this anthology book. This story can go further than just brainwashing John Arbuckle. It can use its powers to take control of other computers throughout the town, and as a result, build an army to brainwash all the people in town. Garfield and Odie would then have to team up with all the pets in the town to defeat the computer army, as well as John's computer that started it all. I would love to read a horror story like that. How about you? In the end, would I recommend this story to others? Despite its short length, I would recommend this story to others. It's a rather tame horror story, especially when comparing it to the various horror stories I read by the author Stephen King. but it's very suitable for its target audience of young children, and it has material that would satisfy fans of the Garfield cartoon franchise as well. If you could find this anthology book, I suggest you give it a read for yourself. Would you like me to review more stories from this anthology book? Feel free to let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed my review of Terminal Terror from Garfield's Scary Tales. And if you have any suggestions for future review books for my videos, please leave them in the comments for me below. Please comment, share my video, and subscribe to my channel as well. Have a nice day, everyone, and thank you very much for watching.